You're listening to the Woman of Value podcast. You are about to hear the story of a woman who is following her dreams and passions and creating positive change in the world.
My guest today is Nina Manolson. She helps women over 40 end their war with food and make peace with their bodies. She's a body trust guide, psychology of eating, and nationally board certified holistic health coach. And she's a relationship counselor for women and their bodies. She's the creator of the Body Love Continuum, which is a map that helps women shift from body hate and self-criticism into body ease, body trust, and body love. She's also the founder of the Nourished Woman Nation, and she's my friend. Welcome to the show, Nina.
Thank you, Sandy. I like that last part best.
We've known each other for quite a while, and I have watched you evolve into the woman you've become, into the work that you do today. And it's been interesting to watch the refinement process. So can you tell us how you came to where you are today in this work?
Yeah, and I thank you for asking that. And I love how you said it's a refinement process, because really that's what the process is, right? It's more and more refining who we are and stepping into that. And we can't, I could not have been who I am now then, because I hadn't even found that part of me. Right. So now I work with women, helping them with their relationship with food and body. But I do that because I was a young woman who really didn't have much of a relationship with her own body. Right. Well, I had a relationship. I should rephrase that. But it was a war. So I wouldn't actually call it a relationship. I would call it a war. And it was a relationship of struggle and strife and criticism. So there was no way that I could look right or be physically acceptable in the eyes of the culture or myself. I grew up in a very loving home, but there was a focus on how you looked. And so I moved away, and when I'd come home, and almost the first thing you'd hear when you walked in the door was like, "Oh, you look good, you've lost weight," or "Oh, you put on some weight." Like the weight comment was like, whoop, out it came, with good intentions behind it, but it had deep impact in my value, and my size are completely linked. And if my size is small, then my value is high. If my size is big, my value is small, which is not, I know, just a me experience, right? It's our whole culture that has this sizist, fat phobia approach that's so damaging. And so I went on my first diet when I was 13 and kept dieting for decades. And so that refinement of who I am is really the refinement of pulling myself out of the diet culture, pulling myself out of this concept that my worth was how I looked and the size of my body, and moving into authentic relationship with my size and my body, moving into authentic, compassionate, caring relationship with myself, and changing my relationship with my food. Because food was the way that I took care of myself, right? It was my default. It was, life is challenging, but, mac and cheese, she's your friend.
When your value lies in the shape of your body and the size of your body, it's so not the full picture of who you are. And I think so many women struggle with this still today. Doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what size you are either.
It doesn't matter what size you are. And it's really important to say, because women are like, oh, this is my internal issue. It's very important, and this is part of the work that I do, is to zoom out, because it's not just you feeling like you're not good enough. It's the way that our culture actually treats women who are in larger bodies, right? Who don't see the intellect or the deep education or the great insight that we have because we might be being in a bigger body. And same goes for smaller bodies, right? I've seen very small, petite women who aren't getting taken seriously because they're considered, oh, she's just a waif, like small, not much in there. I'm like, whoa, the value judgment that we put based on somebody's size or appearance is profound. And so a lot of my journey was, how do I come into an actual authentic relationship with myself to the point where I can feed myself in a way that nourishes me, not medicates me.
Yeah, nourishes, not medicates. I have so much to say, but let's first define woman of value, because you've talked about value so many times, and as this is the Woman of Value podcast, I'd love to hear your definition of woman of value as it applies both to your life and to the lives of other women.
Yeah. I think for me, a woman of value, first and foremost, is someone who values herself. Right? She values her unique gifts, her unique brilliance, her, I often call it her brand of beauty, her brand of brilliance. Because then, as soon as we value ourselves, it becomes crystal clear to the people around us that we're valuable, right? But when we don't, it's really hard. So it can start really small, is valuing. I value the way that I, wake up in the morning and have a ritual in the morning and care for myself before I face the world. Or I value the way that I sit down and eat my meals. Like, it can be so small in the way that we value our relationship with ourselves, because that then translates. I also, and this is partly my upbringing, for me, a woman of value is a woman of service. And it doesn't mean we are giving ourselves up or in this deep place of self-sacrifice and victimhood. That's not what I mean by service. I mean, we give back. We are supportive to our society, because at this point, especially in our culture, if we're not adding and addressing some of the issues that are going on in our culture, and we're just focused on our own little, postage stamp, like, the world needs us. The world needs us so badly right now. And so to me, a woman of value is someone who steps up and engages.
So it took me a long time to get to my value and also what service meant to me. And I love the way you described that. I think that the term that comes to mind is actually from the quote from Hillel the Great that I used in my TED Talk. In Hebrew, it's im ein ani li mili, if I'm not for myself, who am I? Which is the first part of what you said. And Shani la'atzmi ma'ani, and if I'm only for myself, what am I?
Yeah.
So, and the last part, v'im lo achshavei matai, if not now, when. So all of those pieces fall into what you just shared with us.
Yeah.
We have to take care of ourselves. In the morning when we wake up, if we're immediately serving others and negating ourselves, we start the day with depletion. And if we don't fill ourselves up, we cannot serve others. We're too depleted.
Yeah. It's interesting. So the quotes, the Hillel quotes, there's another quote from Judaism that always speaks to me, which is tikkun olam, repair of the world. And I was brought up with that value, right? We are here to repair the world. And in order to repair the world, we sometimes have to start with repairing our own inner world, right? They're not mutually exclusive. And we see many people, I'm sure we can all find examples of people who are busy repairing the world, but they are not feeling well. They're not feeling strong in themselves. They're not feeling nourished, right? Or people who are just repairing themselves all the time. You're like, wait, you got something. Share it over here. So to be in that place of, repair of the world sometimes means our own repair so that we can be of value, right? So what I do is help women do that inner repair so that they can go out and do that work in the world. Because so many women so much of the energy is focused on, what did I just eat? I shouldn't have eaten that. Maybe I should go on paleo. Maybe I should do keto. Maybe I should do intermittent fasting. Maybe I should do raw food, plant-based. Like, it goes on forever. All this energy wrapped up in diet culture that needs to be moved into life. But the only way we can move that energy and re-engage it into our passion and our repair of the world energy is by healing that relationship with our food and our body.
I love everything you just said. Well, first of all, Tikkun Olam has been so resonant for me as well. And I think even in terms of relationships, because that's my main focus, if we grew up in homes where the relationship wasn't ideal, we have the opportunity to parent our children differently, to bring better relationships to the world and to create a better future. But I wanted to talk about that last piece of the like being so obsessed with ourselves and the food and just spending so much time on that. You're not part of life. Someone just shared with me a story of her daughter's mother-in-law, and she said this woman is obsessed with dieting right now. She said she looks amazing, but throughout the day she had to be preparing her little food, and she was so completely removed from the rest of the family. They had just had their first grandchild, and this woman was in the kitchen preparing her little meals all day long and not helping, not being part of the conversation. And I saw how my friend was just like, oh my God, just, it's great that you want to be conscious of your diet, but if it takes you away from life, there's something wrong.
There is, right? You're being robbed. You're being robbed of your life if your obsession, control, and management of food is your life, right? So one of the constructs that I teach is this body love map. And over on one end, imagine a continuum, a line, right? So on one end, we have a place of body hate, right? A lot of women, sadly, know this place well. That's the place of body criticism and body shame and feeling bad about yourself, right? Then you move along that continuum. What happens? You feel bad. I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to go on a diet, right? Maybe it's, this is before the keto and the paleo and the intermittent. Maybe I'll do Sears or Atkins or, all the other diets, right? I'm going to manage this problem. So women get into this place of body management because they want to feel in control, feeling like they're hating their body and then eating in a way that feels out of control. They're like, okay, this has got to stop. I'm going to manage it. I'm going to put my foot down. I'm going to have some willpower. So we get into this place of management, right? Just like what your friend's mother-in-law, whatever that relationship was, just like she's doing, right? I'm going to manage this. I'm going to be in control because life is an out of control process, right? Sickness happens, bad things happen, accidents happen, good things happen that feel out of control. Like, life is a bit of a roller coaster. And so there's this feeling of, if I could just be in control of my food, I would feel safer, right? Or that's one underlying reason. Or if I could just manage and control my food, then I don't have to feel any of my feelings. right? Maybe being around a family and a new baby, and it brings up all my stuff, and maybe I had postpartum depression and it was so hard for me after my baby, and this is just too many feelings, so I'm going to make my meals and they're going to be just this many calories and this many ounces, and everything's going to be in control, and I am going to feel like I got this. But that feeling of management and tightness and restriction only lasts so long. And there's research around this, right? Women who go on diets, women and men, 2 to 5 years, they've gained their weight back, if not more. Most. About 95% of the people who are dieting. So that place of management, it doesn't last. And so then where do we end up? We end up back in the body shame, back in the criticism, right? We end up back in what I call the diet cycle. And so what we want is to move beyond it, right? We want to move into an authentic relationship that's one of healing, right? That's my work. But that place that you're talking about is that place of body management. It's that place of, if I could just lose the weight, then everything would be okay. If I could just, maintain this weight, then all will be well. And there's such a pressure around that takes away our life and takes away our ability to be in authentic relationship, not just with ourselves, but with the people around us, right? There's so many women I talk to who are feeling self-conscious about their body. And so their sex life is impaired because I want the lights out, can't touch my tummy, feeling bloated, like my body's not good enough for this. My body's not acceptable enough for pleasure, right? And that comes from that place of, I have to manage this body. It has to be just so. And what I so desperately want for women is to know that that's not true. Right? And it's interesting too, because when women come to me and they're like, yes, I really want to heal this relationship. This is what's going to change. Like, I'm ready. And then the next question is, but will I lose weight while I work with you? Right? So right underneath is, I'm willing to go on this healing journey if it results in the culturally acceptable size.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to our culture.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from that. It's really hard to get away from that. I mean, the control piece, first of all, it's so prevalent in every aspect of life. I think many of us hate being out of control. We hate feeling out of control. And so I see it also in the dating world, as a dating and relationship coach. There are so many women who try to control the outcome of the relationship, who try to control the responses they get from a man, who try to control how people are going to be with them. And we can't control any of that. We can control how we show up. We can control our responses to things, but we cannot control other people. And I think that's been a major thing in my life, is knowing that you can surrender control when you have that feeling of worth within, when you have that strength. And it's kind of circling back to what we started with. I think that filling the void and healing helps you to realize that you don't even want to control that stuff, because actually life can be really fun to kind of witness as it unfolds. And so many times, like, when I've had crisis in my life, I didn't expect my life to be perfect. I didn't expect it to never have a crisis. So when major crisis hits, I'm able to deal with it. I'm able to say, what's next, instead of why me?
Right. And so important, instead of the why me, it's like, instead of why is this happening to me, why is this happening for me?
Yes.
Right? I'm sure you've heard that before,
Yes.
right? That idea of, oh, here's a process for me to engage in and to be in relationship with the process, in relationship with myself in the process, right? Just be in the growth and learning of food, of body, of life, of all of that. as we were talking about control, I'm wondering if I could share a poem that I wrote.
I would love that. And
So,
for those who don't know, Nina is a beautiful writer. She writes these gorgeous poems about food and body love and body hate and all those things that we struggle with. And there's just something so lovely about your poetry. I personally, they really resonate for me. And I also know that your kids are really very talented with the spoken word as well. And it's a lovely thing that it manifests in very different ways in your family, but that you've found a way to express yourself that really touches people's lives.
Thank you. It's interesting how the poetry started because of my kids. So both of my kids are spoken word poets. And so they would write poetry, like just sit down and out it would come. And then they would perform their poetry. And one year, it was their birthdays. Their birthdays are around the same time as each other. And I was like, oh, I better step up to the plate here and write them poems for their birthday. So I wrote that. It was the first time in many years I had sat down and I wrote a poem for them. And I was like, oh, there's a way that the poetry speaks more directly from my heart and my feelings than my professional hat can speak in education mode or teaching mode. So I've been having a lot of fun with this poetry because it speaks sort of right from the gut of what this experience is. But of course it's informed, right, from my experience of living in a body, from talking to women for over 25 years about their bodies. So yeah, so thank you for that. I'm really enjoying it. So this poem is called I Feel Out of Control with My Food. I'm out of control with my food. I'm already full. I reach for more. I don't stop. I know I should. I know I won't feel good. I know I'll judge myself after. I can't stop. I know this nutrition stuff. I know the food that makes me feel good. I know the food that makes me feel like crap. My head knows. My hands reach. I can't stop. I want to be taking care of myself. I want to be kind to myself. But I make choices that make me tired, choices that make me wired, choices that make me feel like a failure. I can't stop. I say to myself, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start Monday. I need more willpower. I need more control. But I can't stop. But what if it wasn't about control? What if it wasn't about putting down the fork? What if it wasn't about hating yourself into compliance? What if it wasn't about stopping? What if it was about starting? Starting to deeply hear what my body wants, starting to honor my needs, starting to tend to my nervous system, starting to soothe the anxiety, starting to tell the story of my body, starting to mother myself, starting to respect my shape, starting to make peace with my body. I can start.
I love that. Stopping and starting. So many beautiful pieces of that. I think that, first of all, the small steps. I think that many people see the mountain in front of them. I was speaking to a woman the other day who's just kind of newly divorced, going through a lot of chaos, and she's finding a new job and a lot of new direction, and she wants all the answers. She wants to do a lot of research about how other women did what she wants to do. And we were talking for a while, and I said, you're looking outside yourself. The answers are in you, and when are you going to stop doing the research and start just living and not wait for the perfect moment and the perfect everything lining up, because you'll never be ready. So I love the just start. I can start.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying about, like, what you're talking about is the compare and despair.
Mm.
right? That compare and despair is so powerful. So when I was in nutrition school, every time we had these big lectures together, at the end of the lecture, out would come all the success stories. Right? People would come out and talk about how their practice was building and how they were doing so great. And I would literally sink into my chair. And my friend was sitting next to me. We sat next to each other often. And one time she looks over and she's like, "Oh, honey, you are in compare. And the only place that gets you is despair." And I was like, oh my gosh. That's what I'm doing. Like, I am looking to everybody to tell me that I'm not good enough, or I'm looking at everybody to tell me if I'm doing it right. Right? And I think so much of what you're talking about fundamentally with women of value is our value of ourself. Right? Do we value, right? I was not valuing myself. I was looking at them on stage and going, oh, they're doing it right. They have value. Right? But without any attention being paid to the experience that I bring to the table. Right? And it's interesting because what the poetry has brought is allowed me to bring my own body experience to my work. Right? They were parallel processes, right? I was working and repairing my own relationship with food and body, and I was growing as, I first was a massage therapist, working with my hands on women's bodies and hearing body stories. Then I became a therapist because so much trauma was coming up and so much was happening. So I became a therapist. Then I got into nutrition. Then I more in psychology of eating and body trust work. All of those things professionally were going on, parallel process to me healing my own relationship with food and body. Right? The poetry actually, I think, is very valuable because it brings those two together. Right? Of course, my journey impacts the way that I work with people because I know it from the inside out. And so to really embrace our value is our life, is our journey, is our process.
Yes. And it's your unique stamp on the world.
Yes.
And I think until you can really start doing this work, you just think I'm no different from anybody. And when I first started dating again after my divorce, I didn't think I was worthy. I thought my body was ugly because I had had 4 children and it was all stretched out in places. And I would be rejected. And it was a lot of wanting to be accepted by men, by other people, by people in business, instead of saying, what is my value? And it comes with time, and it comes with trying things and putting yourself out there and being bold and courageous and vulnerable, because sharing poetry is vulnerable. It's an art, and it's vulnerability. And through our vulnerability, we really touch people. We don't touch people through perfection. So yeah, can you speak to the perfection crisis we have in
Yeah. Well, I think it's so connected to what you said about being vulnerable. One thing that I've been working on a lot is what happens for me when I get really visible, because I become more and more visible. Right? My poetry's getting out there, and I'm on Facebook more, and like I am becoming more visible. And so I get what I call visibility hangovers. Right? Oh my gosh. There I was with all my crap on the table. Uh-oh. Maybe that was a really bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't have written. First of all, I shouldn't have written that. Second of all, I definitely should not have read it out loud. That's ridiculous, right? So to be in that process of like, oh, I was just really visible in my imperfection, and that has a little bit of a hangover. And somebody wise said to me, you need to create a little bit of a visibility hangover worksheet for yourself. And so I did. So I wrote it down. I was like, okay, what do I need after when I have a visibility hangover? First was, okay, to remind myself that I'm not perfect, right? And to remind myself that my imperfection is a good thing. right? Because part of our value is in all our quirky, imperfect, beautiful, fabulous mess, right? And the other thing is, in my imperfection hangover worksheet, is to tend to my nervous system. Right? Because when I get visible, when I have that vulnerability, when I'm really out there, my nervous system gets cranked up, right? Adrenaline goes up, cortisol goes up. My nervous system is on high alert. I'm like, uh-oh, I'm being chased by a tiger, right? That's what my body, that's what my physiology is saying. And to go, okay, how do I remind myself I'm safe? Right? It's that high alert that then puts us, when we go back to the control conversation, uh-oh, I'm a little out of control. This is a little bit of an emergency. Quick, get the control mechanisms, right? So in the past, I would go, great, where's the mac and cheese, right? To tend to my nervous system, right? I often think in my work, yes, I am working with women and their relationship with their food and their body, and often we're working with their relationship with their nervous system.
Yeah.
And so part of being able to tolerate that authenticity, tolerate our own value, tolerate our own visibility and our vulnerability, is to be able to work with our nervous system and know how to nourish ourselves, mother ourselves, care for ourselves, bring ourselves back to that place of safety and belonging and connection.
Yeah. And I love the visibility hangover and the cure for the hangover. I definitely can relate to so much about the visibility and how it can be really scary. For me, it was about public speaking, and I was petrified to be on a stage. And I also knew that if I didn't go on a stage, it would hold me back. And so the why was bigger than the fear. And there are lots of tools that you can use to calm yourself. And a lot of it was adrenaline stuff. It was false fears. It was fear of being judged, fear of being wrong, of forgetting, of looking like a fool. So whatever it is for any of our listeners, we all have something that creates these false fears. And when we really look at them also, we realize that they don't hold any water, that they're not real. They're just in our minds. And so we begin this interrogation process of what's our truth now? Who are we now? Who do we want to be at our highest? And we have to interrupt these patterns, these neural pathways that have been created for so long. So when you said, and then I would go for the mac and cheese to calm my adrenals, it's changing that process. It's like, okay, trauma in, what do we do now? And so take us through a little bit of the process, because we sort of have covered a bunch of the steps, but I would love to know, like, how does a woman who come to you work?
Yeah. One thing before we get to that is, one thing you said is often they're unfounded fears, but sometimes they're totally founded, right? People are going to judge us. That's true,
Mm-hmm.
right? People will judge. People do judge, right? When I go out and I present, I know I'm being judged on my size, on what I'm wearing, on every accessory. Like, and I have a girlfriend who's like she accessorizes just so perfectly. And I'll see her, and before she even says a word, I'll be like, just give me a second. Let me check the whole outfit out. Okay, now I'm listening. Right? I'm like, just give me a moment, right? For my judgmental self, and not in a bad way, but I'm taking information, and people do that. And to say, yes, people are going to judge, and here I am. This
Right.
is me anyway.
That's so much about not letting other people's opinions define you.
Yes.
So yes, they will judge, which I'm glad you brought up. And does it really matter?
Yeah. Right. And that's a very actually really important part of the healing process with our food and body, is to go, yes, we do live in a fat phobic society. Yes, there is size bias. Yes, those things do exist. It's not in your mind. It's not just in the, 6 inches of brain. It exists out there. There is judgment. Now, how do we want to be in relationship, right? So when I talked about that body love continuum and moving people more towards this relationship of peace with their body. So the way we get there, if you're in body hate and criticism, and you find yourself often in body management, in that place of diet, the way to then step out of that is to move into a process of what I call body awareness. What's happening here? What's the current conversation? How do we start to be with this body, being what I call body current? Not the body for the future, for the wedding that's coming up, not the body that you had in college. How do you be in relationship to this body, right? And I can tell you, this body for me has changed. I can't even count how many times, right? Children, surgeries, illnesses, age, menopause, all the millions of things that happen to women's bodies, right? So being in relationship to this current body and starting to unpack, unfold, uncover, what is my body story? What's held in here, right? If there was anything that I took away from my years of being a body worker with my hands on women, is we all have a story. Every woman has a story in her body about what was said to her. What did she believe about her body? What did her body go through? What did it survive? And part of this place of body awareness is looking through that and bringing a lens of compassion so that we can start to work with this relationship from a place of kindness instead of management. Compassion instead of control, right? Caring instead of fixing. And when we start to make those changes, then, and it's not like, okay, great, we've moved from body hate to body management to body awareness, and then now we're in body love. And I found, even though I tout my map, I think it's awesome, it's great curriculum, I think body love actually is a little too hard for people. And I think it becomes like, I should love my body. And it's too aspirational. But what we can do is say, I can be in true awareness. I can be in authentic relationship. And then what it moves me into is a place of body peace. Great. We've got a truce going on. We're not hating on each other. We're getting along. I'm not loving you every day. I don't look at my stretch marks in the morning and go, my God, you're the most beautiful stretch marks I ever saw. Like, that does not happen to me. But I can go, oh, I see you. Yeah. Yep. Those would be kids. Uh-huh. And I see the scars from surgery. Yep. That would be that too. Right? And I can be at peace. And from that place of peace, from that place of respect, from that place of deep understanding and honoring, we start to care for ourselves better. It's very hard to care for ourselves when we're hating ourselves. Right? We put more attention and intention towards things and people we care about. We need to be on our own care list, because when we are, then body love kind of flowers. Does the flower always bloom every day, all 24 hours? No. Right? Sometimes, like sometimes we're on Facebook and we see our high school, friend, and she's in Tahiti in a tiny string bikini, and suddenly we're like, how did she do that? Maybe that was paleo. And we're back in body management, like in 2 seconds. And then we're like, oh, right, there's body management. How do I come back to a place of awareness, move into body peace so that I can experience the body love when it's there for me to enjoy?
Well, thank you for sharing some of those steps. And I love that you say that aspiration of body love can feel too big. And I think if you went from, hey, you despise yourself, and now you're going to love yourself, that's why I never loved those affirmations that people would say, I love myself. It just felt very inauthentic.
Mhm.
And it doesn't stick. Just like it's like putting yourself on a diet. It's like,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
temporarily you might feel good for about a second,
Yep.
but it's that deep, deep work. The self-compassion to me is just huge. That became so apparent to me several years ago, and it was like compassion, 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 because so many people are stuck in the self-loathing, in the
Yeah.
self-critic. I remember you shared with my dating and relationship audience the inner critic diet.
Yeah,
He said it's the only diet I endorse.
it is.
And I loved it so much because it really does take you through the steps of taming the inner critic. And it's the same kind of thing. It's not saying I will never have an inner critic again. And I do the same thing with the relationship coaching. You know, we can be attracted to a certain type of person who's bad for us. Doesn't mean you will never be attracted to that person after you do the work. But what you will do is not engage. What you will do is not open your heart wide open to get stepped on again and again and again.
Yes. That's about being respectful of yourself, right?
Yes.
And it's not like, years, decades of dieting. It's not like I don't go, oh, like there's some, intermittent fasting is the new thing, or, celery juicing is the new thing. I don't go, there's a part of my brain that goes, oh, really? Maybe interested, right? I'm like a total nutrition geek, right? It's in my cells. I go, like, grew up on that stuff. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, it's not that voice isn't going to be there, but I can go, I know how that ends. That ends with you feeling like this isn't a way that you can live your life. This isn't a way that you can enjoy your family. This isn't a way that you continue to have pleasure. This starts to feel restrictive. This is a diet. This is part of diet culture. Don't engage. And I go, oh, okay. And I move on, right? It's not like that diet voice doesn't come up and go, great idea, next Monday. Like, that diet voice is like a radio station that played for 35 years, and now I just hear it and I turn the volume down and don't
Yeah.
respond.
Yeah.
Right? That's the kind of fluidity we want in our relationship with our food and our body, because when we do static, right, it doesn't work. And we can get into this whole thing about masculine models and feminine models. And I don't mean men and women, and I'm not being gender specific. I'm talking archetypes. But if we talk about the masculine model being very directive, very prescriptive, like baseball stats, right? Here are the statistics. This is the calories. These are the grams. Versus the more feminine model, which is a little more flow, right? It's a little more watery. It's a little more emotional. I can't live in stats. That's not how I can eat and be in relationship with my body, and nor is it how most women manage well. Some, sure. It's just like, yep, that works for me. I'm a numbers gal, and my tracker, and I'm good. Most of the women I talk to, that's not going to stick. They need more of the flow and the feminine. And so that's a huge strength to develop, is that fluidity and flow in our relationship with food and body.
And that brings us back to control again and all the other things. It's just
Yes.
it's all connected.
Totally.
Yeah, I can't diet. I was very, very thin my whole life until I went to Israel for the year. And I think I've shared this with you before. I gained 7 pounds that year. I didn't get my period the whole year. I was 18 years old, and I hated who I became. It was like this bloated version of myself, the woman who could always eat a loaf of bread at one sitting with butter on it, now had to worry about like all this extra weight. And I wasn't fat by any means, but I felt so out of alignment with my body. And so my mother took me to Diet Workshop, which is like Weight Watchers. It was awful for me. It felt so shaming, public shaming. That's how I saw it. And so I said, this doesn't work. I'm not going to get up and announce what I gained and what I lost. I need to do it my way. And I found health food. This is in 1975, when no one I knew except one person was eating sprouts and avocados and no sugar. And that felt like nourishing. And so I know that that's what works for me. It's not restriction. It's not what I saw diet as punishment instead of giving a gift to my body. and discovering exercise too, because I never had to exercise. I was always just naturally thin. And now I see it as a gift. I had this gift of, now you can step into health instead of just being unconsciously thin, which I don't think most people would think that way. But again, it's happening for me, not to me. And my weight has gone up and down. It's, since menopause, it's been, up and up and up. And I got new clothes instead of trying to fight what was happening. I was eating less food, and I was, I didn't understand why this was happening. I just said, I'm going to be self-accepting. I'm going to eat the foods I love. I love preparing food instead of going out to eat, and really nourishing my body that way. And so sometimes it's fresh pizza from scratch, and sometimes it's kale salad, so it's really finding the foods that work for my body, and then I feel good about myself.
And what you're speaking to so much is this constant evolving relationship with our changing body, right? Being body current, right? The feeling uncomfortable in your body when you were a young person led you to then find what did feel right. And you very early on pushed away from the cultural norm of let's control your body, right? So it's so important to be in that, like, wait, what's right for me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I get that a lot when people come and they go, well, Nina, are you going to tell me what to eat? And I'm like, no, but we can figure out what your body is saying that it wants to eat.
Yeah, it's
right?
not a one size fits all.
It can't be, right? It can't be a one size fits all. If it was a one size fits all, there would not be thousands of diet books that are touting this is the way,
Yes.
right? They exist, right? They work for somebody for a little while, right? It's not that they don't work. And there's not that there's anything wrong with wanting to live in a smaller body. There's no judgment in that either. It's let's be in a real conversation. Let's be authentic about it, right? Let's find the value, the wisdom within your own body, and let's let that lead.
Yeah, love it. So Nina, what is your vision for the future? What are you creating? Where are you heading?
So right now I am working on a compassionate eating program. So that's exciting, really bringing everything that we've talked about into a digestible course for people to engage in. And the other way that I am working with women is in the Nourished Path, which is a long-term group program, year long. And the thing that I'm working on really is my poetry, and really letting that come more and more out into the world and off the page. So initially when I started the poetry, my kids were like, well, now you need to perform it. And I was like, yeah, no. And now I am, right? I read you a poem. I've been doing that more and more. So that's really, again, being more visible, a little more vulnerable, letting my voice be heard, and valuing my own contribution to this conversation around women feeling truly at home in their body.
And I want to see the book.
Yes. I want that. I'm still envisioning, because there's like a lot of sort of information and approach, and there's the poems, and I'm trying to find a way for them to dance with each other.
I'm sure you will. So now it's time for the lightning round, and I'm going to ask you a bunch of quick questions, and then we're going to come to the end.
Okay.
So Nina, fill in the blank. I used to think I wasn't blank enough.
Good enough.
Yep. What was the number one thing holding you back from becoming a woman of value?
My sense of my own body, actually.
What's a mistake you made that taught you an important life lesson?
Believing that the diets had the answers.
All of these are like 2-hour discussions, but we're
I
just going to
know.
go for the short answers.
Mm.
What is the best advice you can give to a woman who wants to become more empowered?
Get support from other women and have that support be directing you to be listening to your own wisdom.
Such an important thing. I think most people think getting support is a weakness, and it's actually an incredible strength, and it will save you so much anguish, time, effort, years of self-doubt, just so important. And finally, Nina, how would you like to be remembered?
Really is helping women come home and feel at ease in their own bodies so that they felt empowered to give the world their own true gifts so that they could, and we all could, repair the world.
Tikkun olam.
Tikkun olam comes back home to that one.
Yeah, I love this conversation, Nina. Thank you so much for sharing your compassionate wisdom, your love with all of our listeners.
Sandy, really a privilege. Always just such a delight to be with you and talk to you and explore, and it's juicy.
If you would like to step more fully into your value, grab a free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Woman of Value on my website, thewomanofvalue.com. Just click the link at the top of the homepage. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to click the subscribe button in your listening app. And if there's something in this episode that inspired you, please share it with others, because the more we share these inspirational stories, the more women of value we will have in this world. I'll see you next time.